You are listening to Leading the Factory Forward with your host, Lynn Friest. We share interviews with manufacturing experts and strategies for embracing the digital future, recruiting a new workforce, finding new business. Lynn is an advanced manufacturing strategist and leadership consultant who is on a mission to show manufacturing leaders how to improve their current operations while preparing for a digital future. And here's your host, Lynn Friest.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Leading the Factory Forward. In this episode, we're going to find how do you find a space to lead. So welcome. We've just finished up a series on lessons from the lean startups. In those series of episodes, we're looking at your business and your customers and how do you interact with them and how do you know what they need. But now in this series, we're going to focus back on you, the leader, and how to build your skills and effectiveness. So in this four-part series, we're going to start with finding the space to lead. Then we're going to move on to creating many habits. Then we'll move to an element on focused work. And finally, we'll talk about how to maintain your effectiveness when you're traveling as a business leader. So Finding the Space to Lead is a book by Janice Marturano. And she was a senior leader of a large company. And she started this process as how do we help leaders become more effective in a fast and busy world? Because the problem is, how can you become your best self and lead in the best way to create the future for yourself and your company? Many leaders say that in a fast and busy world, they have problems creating space so that they can think, learn, and plan. We tend to have become more human doings and less really human beings, and that becomes a problem. We find ourselves trapped on the hamster wheel, where we're running fast, but not really getting where we hope to get. As Janice says, we go from doing 3 things to doing 2 things to doing 3 things, and so on and so forth. The advantages we have of technology is it connects us 24/7, 365, but that's also a problem. We receive an overwhelming amount of information and knowledge and stuff that pulls at our brain, our attention, and our energy. And kind of a side note, this wealth of information doesn't seem to create certainty, but actually causes just the opposite. It's confusion. We never know. We never have enough information. We're just always worried that we're missing something. The other thing it creates is a situation that people call continuous partial attention. As you're walking around looking at your mobile phone, as people are multitasking on a conference call or even in a conference room, clearly they're not paying attention or just, again, partially paying attention. The other thing that can happen when you're just partially aware of what's going on around you, it can kind of lead to a persistent worry and anxiety. And those kind of things just drain our energy right out of us. In kind of a different example or a different setting, it's like if a resident from a Midwest city is suddenly placed in the middle of the city of Beijing, China. There's a tremendous amount of new inputs, new sights, new sounds, language, customs, and it can be simply overwhelming to everyone. And from that, when we are in overwhelm, we can naturally go on autopilot, falling back on the habits and behaviors that have worked in the past, even when we know they probably won't be helpful now. But we end up stuck in what we've done in the past with no time to think about, we really need to change what we're doing moving into the future. So what's the upside of creating space and more mindfulness as leaders? When we are paying attention and fully present, we can do great work and deep work. We can also fully utilize our skills and knowledge and not just be catching half the story or part of the thing when we're, again, in this condition of continuous partial attention. We can also allow for creativity. Studies show that creativity only shows up when there is some space. That can be why you get good ideas in the shower or on a walk in nature. Your mind is slightly disconnected, has a chance for some space to think. You can also create greater clarity. When you move away from being on autopilot, you have the opportunity to see things with fresh eyes or fresh perspectives. So having said all that, what's to be done? Janice Marturano proposes that leaders can begin to create some kind of space in their crazy busy lives. Now, this isn't about going off to a mountaintop or living in the woods. It starts by creating even small amounts of space in our everyday routines. In her video, she suggests that if you're going to get coffee, then just be fully present while doing that. As you walk to the place where the coffee is, feel your feet as you stride along. When you get there, notice the smell of the coffee, the warmth. And then as you walk back, notice how you feel. Is your body tense? Are you standing up straight? Just feel what you are doing in the moment. Now, another possible exercise, and this comes from a gentleman by the name of Thomas Crum, and he approaches mindfulness from the martial arts arena, but he has a book called 3 Deep Breaths, and it's as simple as just that. Breath 1, he calls the centering breath, and you breathe in the present moment with balance and energy, and breathe out. Breath number 2 is the possibility breath. You breathe in the me, I want to be, with power and purpose, and breathe out. Breath number 3, the discovery breath. Breathe in the mystery of life and let go of the judgment. Be open to things. So again, here we have 2 small actions that can allow our mind and body to do a small reset during a busy day. And these small breaks seem to be useful because it seems to, again, cause a little bit of a reset rather than just continually racing through the day, winding ourselves up and becoming exhausted by the end of the day. So even these small things that take less than a minute can be very useful. And I'll kind of lead this episode with a couple of thoughts. Janice Marturano's definition of a mindful leader is as follows. A mindful leader embodies leadership presence by cultivating focus, clarity, creativity, and compassion in the service of others. And I think that, as leaders, is always something that we can use to create our best impact for ourselves, our people, and our organizations. Another thought is, I once read that in an African language, the word for hello translates as, I see you. And as leaders of people, can we really say that I see you when we are interacting with the people we lead or the people we're in communication or working with? This whole idea of, do I really see you? Or am I just in this arena of partial attention all the time? So finally, I just want to put in a third exercise. Again, a little different context here, but sit quietly and think of someone you consider to be a great leader. Now, it could be someone you know or someone you'd say you've read about. But then as you sit there quietly, just think of the one-word qualities that come to mind when you think of them. Powerful, it could be clarity, it could be drive, it could be presence or attention. What are the clarities that come to mind when you think of them? Now, I bet it won't be that they can process 200 emails a day or that they can attend 30 meetings in a week. Those don't seem to be the qualities of a great leader or why companies hire people either. So that kind of wraps up this episode. And I certainly highly recommend both the book and the video that are linked in the show notes and the website. In the video, it's a short video. In the first 15 minutes, she gives a presentation that covers much of the same ground I did. And the book obviously covers the subject in great detail. Now, in our next episode, we're going to start talking about creating mini habits. So if we've gone from how we're creating space to change, now we're going to say, how do we actually change? And when I think of these mini habits, I view them as both habits of thinking and habits of action. You know, the habits of thinking are kind of the mindset changes, but how do we sustain those and build on those? And the habits of action are actually, what are the things we're going to be doing? Again, I like to focus on habits because most of our day we tend to do through habits. And to make any positive and ongoing and continuous change, we have to change those habits. And how do we best do that? And we'll be diving into that in the next session. Then following that, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be talking on what do we do about having focused work or deep work. Once we've created some space, then how do we use it effectively and create our best work? And then finally, for those of you who do some traveling, we'll be covering some information from a good friend of mine and his book, The Elite Road Warrior. So that wraps up this episode. Thank you, and thanks for listening.